Who are a few of the most despicable criminals? Let's find out, starting with number 6, the Pharmacists. The extravagant high life of a pharmacist's family is under scrutiny as the patriarch, Huynh, as of the release of this video, is facing serious fraud charges that could land him in jail for up to 10 years. Huynh, the owner of the Cabramatta East Day and Night Pharmacy in Sydney, Australia, was accused of defrauding the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme. During the legal drama, his wife, Lee Hoa Thuy Thak, continued to flaunt their lavish lifestyle on social media, which isn't the smartest thing since they're being investigated for fraud. Thak, who says she's an entrepreneur, posted about a luxurious private dinner at Crown Towers, Sydney, bragging about how over-the-top the evening was. Meanwhile, her husband Huynh gifted their son a $400,000 McLaren following his graduation from college. The excessiveness raised eyebrows, especially considering the charges against Huynh and the family's connection to the pharmaceutical industry. Huynh's alleged fraudulent activities were related to the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, or the PBS. The PBS is a government initiative in Australia that subsidizes the cost of prescription medicines for eligible individuals. It ensures that Australians can access a range of medications without having to pay full price for medicine they need. The accusations against Huynh involve making false claims for medications under the PBS, that the medications weren't ever prescribed by a doctor and weren't given to a patient. The severity of these charges, with the potential for a 10-year jail term, showed how serious the alleged manipulation of a system designed to provide essential health care is. His wife, despite no direct allegations against her, painted a concerning picture with her social media posts, apparently indifferent to the legal trouble her family was facing. In fact, her posts probably made things worse. Thak's involvement as the founder of the Supercars Club Australia and the family's collection of high-performance vehicles, including a $1.3 million Lamborghini Aventador SVJ, further showed off a lifestyle centered around extravagance. The family's actions, mainly those where they're constantly showing off how rich they are, really show that their priorities seem to be more about bragging and showing off. The constant flaunting of expensive stuff and the apparent lack of remorse in the face of some serious charges added to an image of a family more concerned with personal gain than ethical business practices. The fact that the family already owned a successful pharmacy business, which was already doing well without the fraud, made their actions even more confusing. But we all know how they got caught. Number 5. The eye drops. You might remember the case involving Jessy Kurczewski, accused of poisoning her friend, Lynn Hernan, with eye drops, then stealing nearly $300,000. If you don't remember, the story will refresh your memory. In 2018, Lynn Hernan had passed away under suspicious circumstances. In her home, where her body was found, there were open bottles of pills scattered around, and it looked like Lynn may have done the deed herself. However, an autopsy later revealed the shocking truth. Hernan had been fatally poisoned with a lethal dose of tetrahydrozoline, the primary ingredient in Vicine. Jessy Kurczewski, who had known Hernan for years and claimed to be like a daughter to her, was implicated in the crime. Kurczewski admitted to handing Hernan a bottle filled with 6 vials of Vicine, claiming that she was somehow helping Hernan, who she said had wanted to end everything. Conveniently, Hernan's entire estate was left to Kurczewski, who had power of attorney, but suspicions were raised by one of Hernan's cousins. Months before the fatal incident, Kurczewski's credit score had plummeted due to maxed out credit cards, setting the stage for a financial motive. Financial statements revealed payments made from Hernan to Kurczewski along with a fraudulent loan. Kurczewski said Hernan had willingly given her the money. The court learned that after committing the crime, Kurczewski went on a shopping spree, opening accounts in Hernan's name and cashing a check for over $130,000 from the victim to herself. Throughout the trial, Kurczewski denied all charges, with her defense attempting to shift the narrative, suggesting Hernan's passing resulted from a combination of medication she had taken to manage pain. The jury, however, saw through the lies. Jessy Kurczewski was found guilty. As she wept openly in the courtroom, the verdict brought a measure of closure to those grieving Lynn Hernan. Kurczewski's actions, driven by greed and betrayal, have led to a tragic outcome and her possible mandatory life sentence. Number 4. The non-caretaker. Chloe Campion faced legal action after she was found guilty of stealing over £28,000 from a vulnerable woman in her care. Campion, who served as a service leader at the charity Imagine, Act and Succeed, targeted her client, Joan Anderson, who has Down syndrome and dementia. Campion was caught when an anonymous letter was sent to the charity's management, accusing her of stealing money to fuel her gambling problem. The investigation revealed a troubling pattern over a 4-month period, during which Campion used Anderson's bank card to withdraw £28,500. Anderson, described as having severe learning difficulties, relied on the support of the charity for her daily needs. The shady transactions occurred over a 6-month period, and Campion, who had access to Anderson's bank card to make a purchase on her behalf, used the funds for her gambling habit. Campion pleaded guilty to fraud and acknowledging her fault in exploiting a vulnerable individual. Campion's attorney tried to paint a picture of a woman grappling with personal challenges, including post-traumatic stress disorder following the birth of her first child, her partner's cancer diagnosis, the collapse of a cafe where she worked, and the passing of her grandfather. Despite facing potential imprisonment for up to 3 years under sentencing guidelines, Campion received a 12-month suspended sentence from the judge. He took into account Campion's genuine remorse, her early guilty plea, the fact that she had repaid roughly £17,000, and her commitment to addressing her gambling problem. As part of her sentence, Campion was ordered to complete 30 days of rehab, attend women's problem-solving court, and adhere to a 3-month curfew between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Additionally, she was instructed to repay the outstanding amount of roughly £11,500 at a rate of £400 per month. So her punishment was pretty light, but come on though, who steals from someone that has Down syndrome and dementia and relies on charity for their day-to-day needs? Number 3. The venture capitalist. We've previously covered the story of Michael Rothenberg, once hailed as Silicon Valley's party animal, and today we're bringing you another update on his story. Rothenberg built his firm, Rothenberg Ventures, by hosting big events to attract investors and companies. He's been convicted of fraud amounting to $19 million. This development came after a 7-week jury trial revealing the extent of Rothenberg's misdeeds. Rothenberg, from Georgetown, Texas, became known for his lavish approach to networking, which included renting out baseball stadiums, hosting 24-hour parties, and organizing events like Founder Field Day, complete with race car rides and private concerts. His social network, built on connections with successful Ivy League friends and tech elites like Mark Zuckerberg, played a crucial role in establishing his VC fund in 2012. However, Rothenberg's glamorous facade began to crumble as investigations by the FBI uncovered his criminal activities. The jury found him guilty on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, bank fraud, and making false statements to a bank. The Department of Justice said that Rothenberg's schemes resulted in approximately $18.8 million in missing money. The investigation showed that he misappropriated venture capital money to fund the operations of River Studios, a company he founded in 2015, despite claiming it was self-funded. Rothenberg also faced accusations of routinely taking excess fees from the venture capital funds he managed. Investors' funds were allegedly diverted for purposes other than those represented to fund investors, including covering operating expenses and securing a line of credit. The evidence presented during the trial showed a pattern of fraud that extended to making false statements to Silicon Valley Bank to secure a $4 million line of credit. The once celebrated figure in Silicon Valley will now face the consequences of his actions, and Rothenberg could potentially face up to 60 years in prison. Rothenberg will be sentenced on March 1st, 2024. Number 2. The Superstar Traitor. Matthew Burgess, a college dropout, was sentenced to 4 years in jail for swindling roughly £800,000 from his girlfriend's family. The scheme involved Burgess falsely presenting himself as a superstar trader and convincing his victims that he had a license to do trading. Burgess, who began his elaborate deception at the age of 24, targeted his girlfriend, Megan Howard's family, promising them substantial returns on their investments. He made up reports and graphs to show artificial growth in their investments, even paying out out some profits using funds received from other backers, Ponzi style. The victims, including Megan Hauer's father, her father's partner, and the partner's ex-husband, the father's twin brother, his nephew, and a family friend, were all duped by Burgess. Over 5 years, Burgess managed to swindle £801,000 from his 6 victims. However, the scheme finally unraveled when Burgess was hospitalized after attempting to end it all, the event revealing the financial devastation to his victims. The majority of the funds were lost in the market or spent by Burgess on his personal lifestyle and gambling habits. The victims faced severe financial and emotional consequences. Megan Hauer's father, who initially invested £150,000, lost a total of £189,000, leading to irreparable damage to relationships within the family. Gemma Herbertson, the dad's partner, invested £160,000 she received from a divorce settlement aiming to provide a better life for her children, one of whom had a brain tumor. Burgess's actions even extended to Gemma Herbertson's ex-husband, Simon Hill, who invested £100,000 from the sale of his business. He was told that his fund had grown to £142,000, but in reality, £78,342 of his money either hadn't been invested or had been withdrawn. The repercussions affected other victims as well, including Megan Hauer's twin brother, Graham, and family friend Austin Steele, who had invested £65,000 and £50,000 respectively. The court revealed that Burgess had no trading license and had dropped out of college due to an undiagnosed bipolar condition. Despite his lack of qualifications and experience, Burgess had presented himself as a superstar trader. The judge presiding over the case described Burgess as reckless and impulsive, with a selfish disregard for the financial vulnerabilities of his victims. The judge emphasized the severity of the fraud against Gemma Herbertson, noting the fragility of her family circumstances. Burgess admitted 6 counts of fraud by false representation and 1 offense of carrying on a regulated activity when he was not an authorized or exempt person. He was sentenced to 4 years in jail in order to repay £801,000 in restitution. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here for our past release to find out about some of the smartest and most devious crimes. Number 1. The Fun Hacker. Hacker Joseph Garrison from Wisconsin orchestrated a major hacking operation targeting sports betting giant DraftKings. Garrison, bragging about the thrill of fraud, supposedly hacked 60,000 user accounts, then sold the stolen login information. Garrison even sent another hacker a message saying that fraud is fun and that he was addicted to seeing money in his account. The scheme came undone when DraftKings employees noticed that stolen logins were being sold, accompanied by instructions on how to siphon money from user accounts. An undercover agent purchased login information for 2 accounts for $11. During the investigation, authorities executed a search at Garrison's home where they found programs related to a hacking method called credential stuffing and files containing nearly 40 million username and password combinations. Garrison, who had previously admitted to a hacking scheme from 2018 to 2021, allegedly pocketed around $15,000 on a good day and totaling $800,000. Pleaded guilty to charges related to the cyber intrusion. However, his phone revealed a screenshot indicating over $2 million in sales. The charges against Garrison include conspiracy to commit computer intrusions, unauthorized access to a protected computer, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. If convicted on the top count, he could face up to 20 years in prison, which is pretty intense for an 18-year-old kid to be staring down. Garrison turned himself in on the day the charges were announced, and as of this video, has pleaded guilty and is awaiting sentencing. It makes you wonder if any accounts were cleaned out, and how many guys didn't report it because they were hiding their sports betting from their wives. What are some of the smartest scams that almost made it through? Let's get right into it and start with number 6. Glial Racing. For over a decade, Valentine Ballin defrauded Hong Kong businessman and race car driver Jackie Young out of $20 million. Ukrainian Ballin ran a marriage agency in his home country, a service that matched foreign, affluent men with potential wives. Young arrived in Ukraine in 2008. A defense sentencing memo claimed he was in the country to find a potential partner, although Young's attorney vehemently denied the claim. Either way, Young met Ballin and the two discussed potential investment opportunities. Bellin convinced Huynh to invest in a travel agency, and a year later, Huynh had spent $9 million on 7 buildings and a sports field. However, the businessman didn't know he hadn't actually purchased any of the properties. Bellin wired him $50,000 monthly, which he claimed was rental income. Now that Bellin had developed a strong business relationship with Huynh, he persuaded the racer to invest in a rare earth mine that provided metals for electronic devices. The investment could be very lucrative for Huynh, if it was real. The investment opportunity was a scam, but Bellin took extreme measures to make it look legit. Huynh visited Ukraine in 2010, and Bellin arranged a motorcade to drive him to meet a government minister at her estate. Except, the woman Huynh met was a hired actor, and the home was a hotel. The fraudster also arranged to have someone pose as a fellow investor in the mine who presented fake documents that alleged she'd paid $500,000 to buy into the rare earth enterprise. Bellin and Huynh then went to Dubai to work on a deal for the mine in the summer of 2010, where Bellin introduced Huynh to a young woman who pretended to be a government minister's daughter. He said she was a Yale graduate. Huynh asked why she didn't speak English, to which Bellin explained she didn't need to learn it as she studied Russian literature, and he bought that. Huynh needed to free up funds to keep up with his investments with Bellin. He sold his home and his Bentley and McLaren luxury cars. Bellin persuaded Huynh to sell a building he owned to fund another mining investment, and even provided potential buyers for the building who would pay the businessman directly. To prove the sale was valid, Bellin sent Huynh a photo of himself with stacks of cash. Of course, those buyers didn't exist, and Bellin transferred ownership of the $13 million to himself. Things were going well for Bellin, until they weren't. Things fell apart when Bellin's relationship with his girlfriend, Olena Trimachenko, crumbled. Bellin took their 2 children to LA and Manhattan without Trimachenko's consent. Trimachenko filed a Hague Convention action, an act designed to resolve international kidnapping cases. However, Bellin still refused to let her see their children. Desperate, Trimachenko reached out to Huynh to put pressure on Bellin. She told him Bellin had taken their children and wouldn't let her see them. Huynh asked about his investments and mentioned the mines. Trimachenko informed him she had no idea what he was talking about and that Bellin didn't invest in mines. Bellin was arrested and pleaded guilty to the scheme in May 2019. He received a prison sentence of 109 months, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and was ordered to forfeit $20,107,243 and to pay $13,309,918 in restitution. Number 5. Stealing houses? Career con man Joseph McConney ran a real estate scheme in New York City that preyed upon people struggling to make ends meet. Human snake McConney had a long history of faking documents and preying upon the vulnerable. He found his targets by monitoring local courts, searching for homeowners who died without wills, and scouring tax liens to find properties in financial distress. One of his targets was Ronald Stewart, a disabled man living with his daughter in the $2 million home he inherited from his mother. Stewart fell behind on the property taxes he owed the city. McConney saw an opportunity. The debt had caught McConney's beady-eyed attention. Stewart received eviction papers in 2013, making it appear that his financial struggles had caught up to him. The eviction papers came from a company linked to McConney and stated that another company, also operated by McConney, had paid Stewart's back taxes and now owned the property. McConney then handed Stewart more papers a few months later. Stewart later admitted he only skimmed the paperwork before signing because, like most of us, he's not a lawyer, and those ridiculously worded papers don't make much sense. The documents contained a deed from December 18, 2012, signed by a South Carolina woman Stewart had never met. The deed gave McConney control over the Harlem property and offered Stewart $2,690 for a deposit on a new place, but Stewart never saw a penny of that money. Instead, Stewart moved into a single-room occupancy where he paid $200 per week. Almost a year after receiving the eviction papers, Stewart sued McConney in the Manhattan State Supreme Court. It took 5 years for a jury to give Stewart his home back, finding McConney had tricked him into giving up the property. But McConney, who has no conscience, refused to go down without a fight. He quickly sued Stewart to recoup the property taxes and maintenance McConney paid when the home was in his possession. The judge dismissed the case, but McConney filed an appeal anyway. In 2012, McConney turned his sights to a $2.2 million Harlem brownstone owned by Veronica Palmer, an older woman who bought the building in 1985. McConney created a company named Palmer Organization LLC to make it look like it was Veronica's company, which it wasn't. Then he had his lawyer file paperwork claiming the LLC as the rightful owner of the building. McConney's longtime attorney, Stephen Massif, created the LLC and listed his address as McConney's Queens office. McConney filed the paperwork with the city, which didn't question it, as it seemed like she had transferred the property to her LLC. In New York, a limited liability company doesn't have to identify its owners publicly and doesn't require the owner to list their addresses. Scammers across New York City will transfer property from one LLC to another multiple times and then start a quiet title proceeding. In the proceeding, the final LLC in possession of the property sues everyone involved, including the other LLCs that held the title before. McConney followed that same scheme and sued Veronica Palmer, the Palmer Organization, and other companies connected to her townhouse through another LLC he controlled called 118 Street Corp. The filing stated 1 Street Corp paid Palmer $10 for her home. When Palmer received the paperwork, she either didn't know she needed a lawyer or didn't have the means to hire one. Palmer never showed up in court to fight McConney's claims, and a judge issued an automatic win for McConney's 118 Street Corp, which is a default judgment. It gave him control of the property. McConney took out a $1.2 million mortgage loan and a $650,000 line of credit for construction to renovate and convert the building to a multi-unit rental, where he made $3,000 to $3,400 per unit each month. Veronica Palmer lost everything and was homeless. In July 2021, authorities finally arrested McConney, and the state attorney general indicted him on charges of mortgage fraud, falsifying business records, and criminal possession of stolen property. Number 4. Coupon Crime Wave. In 2012, Arizona police arrested Robin Ramirez, Amico Fountain, and Marilyn Johnson in connection with a bust for the biggest counterfeit coupon ring in the country. The 3 women ran the business in the Phoenix area and used their aptly named website, Savvy Shopper Site, to sell fake coupons to customers at a highly discounted rate. The group invited users to join their fake website to receive free or discounted coupons and gave them a 100% guaranteed refund if they were deemed invalid at the point of sale. The coupons were for things like free pet food, household goods, and diapers, offered from as many as 40 major manufacturers, including Hershey and PepsiCo. One coupon purchaser raved on a message board after paying $7 for a mega pack of Pampers diapers. Customers had access to unlimited coupons and saved hundreds of dollars monthly. Some people even got cash back if the value of the coupon exceeded the item's price. If a person had a $25 coupon for dog food, they could buy a $15 bag and receive the difference in cash. Ramirez began selling counterfeit coupons in 2007, and the other women joined later. The trio had the coupons made overseas. Some were made up, but others were reproductions of legitimate coupons. The name Savvy Shopper Site drew in customers due to its similarity to the Savvy Shopper magazine, which sends out real coupons weekly. Procter & Gamble discovered fake coupons in circulation during a routine audit of third-party coupon processors. They contacted private investigators to get to the bottom of the situation and reached out to the Coupon Information Corporation, which apparently is a thing. The company brought in the Phoenix police, who conducted an 8-week investigation. The police went undercover to make purchases and identify the 3 women. They must be pretty bored in Phoenix. Authorities raided Ramirez's home in July 2012 and seized over $25 million in fake coupons. They also discovered and seized more than $2 million in other assets, including cash, 211 vehicles, 22 guns, and a speedboat. All the expected stuff you'd need when running a fake coupon ring with other housewives. The 3 women were making so much money in the scheme, they didn't know how to spend it all. Authorities uncovered large amounts of cash and even an airplane hangar filled with sports cars and a fully decked out RV. Police finally arrested the trio and charged them with forgery, fraud, and counterfeiting. As the ringleader, Ramirez was the only one that faced prison time, receiving a 2-year sentence, while Fountain and Johnson got probation. The court ordered all 3 to pay roughly $1.3 million in restitution to Procter & Gamble. The women's story became a movie called Queen Pins that starred Kristen Bell. It offers a comedic take on the trio scam, where a suburban housewife and her vlogger friend devise a scheme to sell fake coupons online and make millions of dollars. However, the trio will never see a penny from the movie, as Arizona state law forbids convicted criminals from profiting by selling their stories, which makes sense, but seems a little unfair. The movie's directors emphasized the story was a fictional version of their actions. Ramirez, Johnson, and Fountain are now living a much more low-profile lifestyle and seem to want to separate themselves from their crimes, minus making their monthly restitution payments. Number 3. she didn't see her future? Psychic Zoey, a self-proclaimed psychic who operated in New York City, used her spiritual status to con at least 2 clients out of over $800,000. Psychic Zoey, whose real name is the less psychic-sounding Ann Thompson, claimed to be a psychic medium and offered $5 readings to her clients. Thompson convinced some clients they needed more spiritual attention than just a quick reading. She told them they needed to give her money for spiritual protection plan to protect their family members. Thompson's service wasn't cheap, but she assured her client she would return the funds once the protection plan ended. She later refused to return the funds, claiming it would put her targets and their families in danger. So basically, Scientology. When a 49-year-old man from the Midwest visited her, she convinced him he was suffering from psychic maladies and that an evil spirit was tormenting his son. It was plausible as the man was having a difficult time with his son. She coerced him into buying $72,000 in gold coins to cure his aura. He would then visit her temple with them as part of the ritual. Thompson informed the man he would only have to supply half the gold coins and her temple would cover the other half. She promised that by the end of the ritual, he could either keep the gold coins or she would return the money. They signed a contract that outlined the terms. In blood, next to a skull with a candle on it. Just kidding, but that's how it should have been. The man discussed the matter with his wife and decided to ask for the money back. As promised, Thompson refused. Another target was a woman in her 50s from Canada. She was visiting her college-aged child in New York in 2013 and paid Thompson $5 for a reading. Thompson told her she was in danger and was plagued by several curses. Then, Thompson convinced her she needed to purchase gold coins and some other items which would be set up in Thompson's temple to protect her from danger. Thompson assured her the temple wasn't making a profit from the transaction and that everything inside was the woman's property. Over 4 years, Thompson swindled $740,000 from her. When they realized she was a fraud, they hired Bob Nygaard, a private investigator specializing in the apprehension of psychic scammers. Nygaard began investigating the case in 2016 and in 2018 had enough information for a formal police report. Police arrested Thompson for conning her clients out of over $800,000. Her targets testified in court about Thompson preying on them as they struggled psychologically and emotionally. The female target described Thompson as evil. She turned her life savings over to the supernatural fraudster, and the situation drove her to homelessness. The woman pleaded with the judge not to let Thompson out on probation. Thompson spent 8 months in jail before being released due to the pandemic. She pleaded guilty to scheming to defraud and grand larceny charges in Manhattan criminal court. The judge sentenced her to 5 months on probation and agreed to pay back more than $200,000 as part of a plea deal. Thompson then gave a brief, half-hearted apology to the people she scammed. Number 2. Posting weights. New Jersey businessmen Jack Koch and Stephen Koch conducted an elaborate scheme that stole millions of dollars from the United States Postal Service. The pair used doctored labels to ship the household products they sold on Amazon at a cheaper flat rate. To do this, they bought flat rate envelope postage labels designated for USPS-produced compact envelopes and removed the flat rate ENV endorsement from the labels. They removed the labels electronically and then reapplied the altered labels to packages that didn't qualify for the flat rate service to avoid paying higher postage rates. The USPS requires that pieces of mail under 70 pounds have the designation of flat rate envelope to use the discounted rate, although other mail pieces don't need to bear labels showing the postage was prepaid. This process allowed them to ship awkwardly shaped packages like bottles of water, laundry detergent, and even cases of soda at a low rate. Jack and Stephen purchased over 240,000 USPS priority mail labels, most of which were for flat rate envelopes, through their business Fresh and Clear. When federal authorities raided Fresh and Clear's warehouse, they found roughly 225 priority mail packages with fraudulently altered labels. The scam cost USPS at least $6 million in postage revenue. Jack and Stephen pleaded guilty to mail fraud charges before U.S. District Judge William J. Martini. The charges carry a maximum penalty of 20 years and a maximum fine of $250,000. Number 1. Force testing. Donald Booker and Dolores Johnson devised a scheme to defraud millions of dollars from the North Carolina Medicaid program. Between the two, they filed over $20 million in claims and received $15 million in reimbursements for urine testing services. Booker and Johnson ran their own companies. Booker had 2 organizations, United Youth Care Services, which provided mental health and substance treatment services, and United Diagnostic Laboratories, a urine toxicology testing laboratory. Johnson owned a subsidized housing provider called Legacy Housing. Alongside her co-conspirators, she used her connections through the organization to recruit housing vulnerable individuals and other people who were Medicaid-eligible beneficiaries for housing, other programs, and services. Enrolled beneficiaries had to perform testing to participate in the programs. Johnson would collect the specimens and send them to United Diagnostic Laboratories and United Youth Care Services, who would perform the unnecessary testing. The two would tell participants in the programs that they would lose their housing if they didn't agree to the testing. At least one person's case file was falsified with a list of addictions she didn't have. Booker and Johnson even encouraged substance use from their participants. If they tested clean, the fraudsters would punish them. They needed their targets to appear to be struggling with addiction, so medical professionals would sign off on documents authorizing the testing as medically necessary. Booker then received reimbursements from North Carolina Medicaid, which he would use to pay a kickback to the co-conspirators. Between January 2016 and May 2021, Booker's company submitted millions of dollars in claims to Medicaid. Booker paid over $1.6 million in illegal kickbacks to Johnson for the testing samples from actual Medicaid beneficiaries. Eventually, one unnamed person had enough. The transitional housing she had been in for 8 months was rodent and roach infested. She'd approached Booker about the living conditions several times, but he just dismissed her. So she filed a formal complaint against Booker and Johnson. The FBI arrested Booker and Johnson on federal charges, including conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, violations of the anti-kickback statute, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and actual money laundering. In December 2022, Jordan pleaded guilty to conspiracy and money laundering. Booker pleaded not guilty, but a jury convicted him of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, multiple violations of the anti-kickback statute, money laundering, and money laundering conspiracy. They now await sentencing. Prison will probably be an upgrade to the slums the two are running. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you'd rather have happen. Find a bag with $1 million cash, but with no way to find the owner, or receive a $100,000 reward for returning a lost suitcase with $1 million of cash.